Okay, so I've been interested in butterflies since about 6 years of age. And this guy over here, why is it not? I thought maybe it was all in the wrist.
It might be. Gotta flick it.
Okay,
Is that
that's what I want.
Okay.
Okay,
You want to give it one more try and see if you can.
okay, let me see if I
There you
can
go.
go backwards. Okay, so I can go forward. Okay, this guy, I guess, caused the problem or caused the positiveness of my love of butterflies. I was 6 years old at the time. I remember this very clearly. I probably forgot everything else that happened at age 6. But my father had bought me a pedal car. It was a fire engine. It had two neat little ladders, maybe about this long, this wide, hooked up on the side. And I was taking that pedal car and I was driving it around our garage, which was separate from the house. And so I'm going around, and as I'm coming back up toward the house, a cabbage white butterfly comes through the chain link fence and hits me on the cheek. And that's what got me interested in butterflies. I thought it was so neat. And so it's either the blame or the praise for this guy. By the way, the one on the left is a female. The males only have, I think I should go over here, I'm not sure. The males only have one dot over here. And the females have two. So, and that's what the underside looks like, of course. I'm not sure if that's a male or female because I can't see. But it was at that point where I wanted to catch them and collect them. The only thing I had was a badminton racket. Okay, so a couple of my brothers and I would take those. They'd come through the fence. We were 6, 5, and 4. So they'd come through the fence and we'd chase after them and we'd catch them all right, but we really trashed them because the wings are so delicate.
Is that why you're a tennis coach?
No, I did become a tennis coach at one point, yeah. I never made that connection. Maybe I should go into therapy. So my father saw what we were doing. He figured, well, he'd make us a net. Okay. And I might be dating I think they still come in it. The onions stacked in a red bag, sort of that, it's kind of, well, he made us nets out of that. He took an old coat hanger, put a couple of those together, and we had them. They worked a little bit better than the badminton racket, but they were still kind of coarse. So, but we learned to be a little bit more delicate when we were swinging and such. It wasn't until a little later on that he found probably my mother found some netting at one of these fabric stores that was a lot better. The only thing was those tended to rip more than the other ones. But we learned to live with it. We learned how to sew a little bit, and we moved on from there. Okay, this is the first butterfly book that I ever had. And my parents bought it for me, and it had a lot of nice pictures, not necessarily of everything in the area, but it gave me a little bit more education on different types of butterflies. And then I had this one here. There was a version that was just butterflies alone, butterflies and moths, and it had a white cover on it. And I had that for years and years and years, and I think I have it at home, but I couldn't find it. So this one will have to do. Okay, I'm going to start out with something that everybody is familiar with. Okay, the monitor. And most often it's confused with another one, which is called the viceroy. And the main difference between the two Okay, you see this extra band down here on the viceroy. Okay, that's not present in the monarch. It's a little hard to see because the forewings are covering it a bit. But that's one of the differences. The other one is the viceroy is smaller in size than the monarch is. And then you see the underside, that stripe is still there on the underside. And both very pretty butterflies. I love them all. You know, there are some that are especially favorite, and that might come out in my talk as we go on, but just seeing each one, especially for the first time each season, is it's almost like greeting an old friend. Hi, how are you? Good to see you again. Even though it isn't the same one that you saw in the previous season.
But you don't know that.
Oh, but I do know that. I do know that. These things only live for a short time. Monarchs can live up to a couple of months to maybe about 6 or 7. The ones that migrate down south never come back up all the way. They have to mate and lay eggs along the way. And it's their children or grandchildren that actually come up. And the ones that live up in this area during the summertime, about a month. Other butterflies only live for a couple of days, some live for a week. There's one that does live up to a year. The adults come out in June, and then in April and May, they make and lay eggs, and that starts the whole cycle over again. By the way, if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to interrupt.
Do you, butterflies and moths, are you looking at them as the same? Or are you looking just at butterflies?
Well, I look principally at butterflies, but I do have some moths in my collection. Usually they're more of the larger and showy kinds.
Right.
I saw one on the on my front storm door a couple of days ago. There's a moth about this size. I haven't looked it up or anything. Very pretty pattern in a combination of browns and grays and things. So if I see something like that, in fact, I was going out to photograph butterflies over at Happy Valley Wildlife Management Area. So I already had my camera when I walked out the door, and I spotted it on there. Okay, he can be the first picture of the day. Okay. The voice, oh yes.
Does the viceroy depend on the milkweed?
No, no. It likes to visit it and take the nectar as an adult. But the larvae don't feed on it like a monarch would. And that's the whole thing with its mimicry. It mimics the adult so that birds, after they've gone through the experience of eating a monarch and getting sick and regurgitating or whatever else, they learn to stay away. So by imitating the pattern of it, they're usually left alone. Unless it's a new bird, first time it's out, it happens to see a viceroy, thinks, oh, these things are very tasty. Well, it's only a matter of time before it hits a monarch and realizes that maybe I should look elsewhere. This viceroy actually belongs to a group called admirals. And on the right-hand side is a white admiral. It also used to be called the banded purple. It's kind of gotten away from that name. The thing about regular names, common names, is you can name it anything you want. It's the scientific name that actually matters when you're talking about these things. So just to show you another example, this one on the right, which was taken at Rice Creek here by the fish fighters, is called a red spotted purple. The red spots are more prevalent on the other side. Oops, I didn't want to do that. This is what I wanted to do. There are some red spots here, and on certain individuals, they show up a little bit more. But on the other side, they're much more prevalent than what you see on the top side. I learned these as being separate species. Okay, they actually belong to the same species. One is the more prevalent one is the white admiral up here. As you go further down south, you see more red spotted purples. And then there's this zone where you get a combination of each. Now that zone is very strong in Western New York. Okay, over here, not so much. I was so lucky to see this one. Because all the years I've been up here now, since about what, 1980, these are the only ones I've seen. So, and both at Rice Creek. Here's an interbreed between the two. So if the red spotted purple and the white admiral happen to make, this is one of the forms that could come out. This one I caught in Western New York in 1967. Okay. It's got this scientific form called Proserpina. And I was very lucky to get that because they aren't all that common. The white bands, especially on the white admiral, are actually a recessive trait. So for some reason, it's that recessive trait that's more prevalent in this area out here. Whether it has to do with climate or whatever, I'm not sure.
Excuse me, do they cross mate very often, butterflies? Like, is that common?
It happens every season with certain butterflies. But it doesn't happen often enough that you see these intermediate forms. Okay, I only saw one other one like this. I was unable to photograph it because it wouldn't cooperate, and that was over at Happy Valley on the eastern end of Oswego County. Okay. Then we're still talking about the year 1967. Okay. These are two from my collection. The one on the right, which is much smaller in size, was caught in June. Okay. The other one was caught in August. Okay. Now, that bothered me for a long time. I couldn't find out why it would be so much smaller than the other one. So I had a job for a couple of years teaching in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I joined the Maryland Entomological Society. And among those members was a guy by the name of Dr. Austin Platt. And he was interested, he crossbred all these things, also with various species that are found on the West Coast. Okay. So he was, so I asked him about this. And he said, well, what happened in June was there were a lot of successfully laid eggs that survived. And they were in competition for the food source. And it seems that when you're in competition for the food, there's this rush to get through the stages. So in the process of rushing through the normal stages and developing into a regular size, these guys ended up going through it a lot quicker, and they come out as a smaller organism. So I thought that was really neat. And you can see there's quite a size comparison. And I took this one just to compare it with other ones in the area. Okay, there's a common yellow sulfur in the area, and the common cabbage white again. So you can see that it's quite reduced in size. He had asked me when I moved up to Oswego if I could catch some white admirals, keep them live, and ship them to him, so that he could continue with his crossbreeding. And he gave me directions on how to pack it, make sure that they were, well protected, so they wouldn't be crushed or die along the way. And so he used some of those in his research. Okay, this is known as a queen. Okay, this is the same genus as the monarch. It also feeds on milkweed. Okay, and notice that it is a darker color. So there's outside and the other side. And if you go down south, where this one was actually photographed in the Tucson, Arizona area. But if you go down south, you happen to see some of the viceroys. Some of the viceroys have a darker color to imitate these queens. They don't get quite as dark as these, but they get darker than what their normal color is. It's pretty interesting, at least I think. Okay, here is one of my favorite of all time. Okay, this is a spicebush swallowtail. It's a male, The male can be told from the female by having all this green underneath. I'll show you a female in a moment. This was taken as you come down the road into Rice Creek. There's that curve, but that curve used to go straight on. It used to be a road. It was a Brownell Road. Okay. And there's a metal bridge that goes over Rice Creek. Okay. Right on that metal bridge was this male sipping moisture and trying to get nutrients out of the soil. Many male butterflies will do that. Okay, they'll go on to dung, they'll go on to wet mud, they'll go on to damp soil, and just try to get some of the mineral salts that are there, and that helps in their sperm formation. So very rarely will you see a female around. Okay, this is how excited I was when I saw that. Okay. In fact, I'm in the back seat there. And it's just the joy of seeing some of these things, and not only seeing them, but to be able to get a decent photograph of them, because they're not always cooperative.
No.
So, you have to develop ways of sneaking up on them. And one of the techniques I use is, if I see something at a distance that I really want to get a picture of, I'll get a certain point away from it, I'll take a picture. And then I dare it to take off. Move up a little bit more, take a closer picture and a closer one, till I can get actually the best one that I can get. And sometimes they cooperate and sometimes they don't. Yes.
Like does the weather and warm or hot or cold and the wind and things like that make it better or worse for kind of capture pictures? And are there any kind of tricks of the trade to get them to be more cooperative?
Well, the way they're more cooperative is when they're preoccupied. So that spice bush was preoccupied. It wanted those mineral salts. If you find a butterfly on a flower, okay, depending on how much it's already fed, it can be extremely cooperative. Wind is not a good friend. Okay. Sunlight is not necessarily a friend either in terms of the photographer trying to get a picture. Because you have to watch when you're getting down on it, you have to know where the sun is shining. You don't want to cast a shadow on it. So you want to try to move around, and that's not always easy. Usually you end up scaring them off. And then sometimes when you do get around, depending on what angle they're at, you've got a perfect shot at the wing, and you can't see any detail because it's all darkened because it's on the other side of the sun. So there's all these things that come into play. Makes it a bit of a challenge. But I think it's more fun than chasing it with the okay. Which over here, this is going to the extreme on making fun of butterfly collectors. Wish I could read that with the thing up there, but it says, it's talking about the professor. They'll have to navigate that Linnaeus plexipus in less than 10 seconds if he hopes to win. Well, Linnaeus plexipus is the scientific name for a monitor. That's not a monitor. These comics are from Gary Larson from the Far Side. Okay. And he was a biology major, so that's why a lot of his cartoons feature insects and animals and things like that. Here's the female spice bush. So notice it's got a blue sheen to the hind wings as opposed to that bright green. And it actually, in most circumstances, is a little bit more metallic and shinier. It's probably just the way the picture was taken, because they really are quite showy. Here is the largest butterfly in our area. This is called a giant swallowtail. And we just discovered these things as residents at the field station in around 2009. Around 2011, I think it was. They feed on the rue, which is in the herb garden. And that's one of their favorite plants. And so we found larvae there, and we would watch them and look at the changes in the instars as they came along. But around 2011, they had a group of volunteers come in toward the end of the season and trim the flowers. And there were a number of these larvae that were still on the root, and they cut the root down. Okay, so I was doing some research out here with Peter Weber. He's a retired professor here at the college, and he was livid. I mean, I was disappointed too, but he made a formal complaint to the field station director at the time, and the way we got around that so it wouldn't happen again is we posted a sign out there to leave that plant alone. And there's the other side. This one is more than likely a female. And the reason why I know that is because the body is as swollen as it is. It's still full of eggs. The body wings are in pretty good condition. So it's probably not much more of a recent hatch, maybe a day or so. There is, again, I'm pressing the wrong things here. There is a rip in the wing over here. You can tell because there's a little bit of green shade in the background, but otherwise a very, very beautiful and nice.
Well, when did the eggs hatch if they were still there in the fall when they were cutting stuff down?
Well, what these things usually do is they hibernate as larvae. Okay, so there weren't any eggs at that point.
So they can do that even here where it gets down to, a little freezing.
Certain butterflies can, others can't. So they either migrate or, in the case of the orange butterflies, cabbage white size, they do not survive the winters up here. So they come up from the south, and then as the colder weather sets in, they end up dying, and then it's the next generation that has to come up this way. This is what the larvae look like of the giant swallowtail. They look like bird droppings. So I've got an earlier instar there, and then on the right-hand side is one later. There's an earlier one again. There's the root that it feeds on. Okay. This one here is known as a ringlet. These are really neat guys. We get a few of them here at the field station. They're not very abundant. They're more abundant over at Happy Valley. And 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't find them around here at all. They were basically Canadian species that have worked themselves down this way. And as they have, they've become more and more common. The neat thing about these, which they're classified in a group called satyrs, okay, is that they're usually found in fields and they hop through the vegetation. Okay, so as they're actually going through, the wings are, they spread the wing real quick, and then the wings condense, and then they hop to their next area. And that's so that they can negotiate between the blades of grass and other plants that may be in the area. So sometimes it's very hard to keep track of them. This one is smaller than cabbage white size. Give you an idea. Here's another member of that group. This is known as a common woodman. And the female is on the right-hand side, the male is on the left. The female, I can tell, is a very recent hatch. If you look at this area over here, there's kind of a metallic purplish sheen to it, or a bluish sheen. Okay. As they get older, that wears off. But I just happen to get to see. Now here's an instance where they're very cooperative because they've got other things in mind. Okay. So it makes for a good photo. Okay. This is known as an elfin. The only place I've seen elfins is at Happy Valley. Okay, they're out in the month of May. And this one is known as a pine elf, and it is one of the few butterflies whose larvae feed on pine trees. Okay, most other ones are on deciduous trees, but these guys feed on the pine trees. This is a male. The proboscis is over here, and it's sipping moisture from the ground.
What do they eat on the pine? Needles?
They eat the needles themselves, yes. Yeah.
Certain current conifers? What kind?
In the old pine tree or?
Yeah, usually a variety of pine trees. Yeah, not spruce, pine. So this one is the more common one in the area. I went out last Thursday over there because this is around the time where I would see them. And we're going away on vacation for a week, so I had to get it in before we left. And I was looking for one that is known as Henry's elfin. Henry's elfin used to be fairly common out there until they allowed some people to come in and harvest some of the trees. Okay, and they do that, of course, because then you get the brushiness forming after a while, and that's good for the deer population. So they took down these magnificent trees where I used to see the Henry's elfin. Here's the Henry's elfin here, both of them. We used to see them there all the time, and now within the last 7 or 8 years, I'm lucky if I see one. So I went down this trail, and I went to the section where I normally found the two, didn't find the thing, about a mile. I started walking back, and just before I got to the position where I could see my car, the little black thing goes fluttering close to the ground, which is what these things do. And it was one of these Henry's elfins. So I got to see my Henry's elfin. And, I kind of make a joke with my wife every year. I say, well, it's May, it's elfin season, and we joke back and forth about it. And this year she said to me, we've been doing this for some time. What's an elfin? I'm sure I told her somewhere along the way it was a butterfly. And she says, oh, I thought maybe you were just kidding. You're going out into the woods, and you're seeing some kind of, no, it's an actual butterfly. So, okay, this is another strange one. This one is known as a harvester. Okay, its larvae are the only carnivorous ones in the area. Carnivorous, they feed on woolly aphids. So if you have a good stand of, let's say, speckled alder, okay, you have woolly aphids on them, this is a thing to look for. Okay, so this one happens to be resting on a hemlock branch. And this was over in Happy Valley again. And it was fairly early. Usually when we see these, they're in July. Okay, this one I found in May. So I don't know if it was a little bit warmer over there where things, it could come out of its pupa a little earlier. A lot of things with microclimates. You might be outside today, it might be 68 degrees. Well, in another area, the field station grounds, it might be 72. In another area, it might be 58. So, and all this stuff has an effect on them.
Is there a particular part of Happy Valley which you want to see all these butterflies or the whole place?
Well, Happy Valley is a wildlife management area. It's a big expanse. There's usually about 3 or 4 trails that I go on. One that I don't go down as much as I probably should is the one that is more open to the public. You can tell just by the width of the trail and all, and they have a few benches there for picnicking and such. But I usually go down a couple of trails that are a little less traveled. There's one trail going down east on 104, and you see a big building at the corner with the sign saying Happy Valley. That's a maintenance building. And down that road is a really nice spot to find a lot of these things too. And of course, you get the other visitors too, like black flies and deer flies, and all those other fun things to deal with. Okay. We think of butterflies as being nice and free and lovely and everything. I like what Gary Larson did here. Okay, the butterflies on the wrong side of the meadow. Okay. So you've got one that say eat pollen and die, and then British schnabel is a moth. Oh, how degraded can you get, you know? But probably one of my favorite things about this, and I don't know how well you can see it, right over here, this one, oh no, that's not, no, that's a slide coming up. But this guy here is smoking. So, you know, they really are, you know, we can be so anthropomorphic at times, give them these human characteristics. Again, he had a way of humor that. Okay, talk about a couple of migrators, because usually when you talk about butterfly migration, what's the first butterfly that comes to mind? The monarch. There are other ones that do it as well. Okay. So one of them here is a painted lady. Very beautiful butterfly. This picture was taken here at Rice Creek in September, somewhere around the 18th to the 20th of September, a couple years back. And they were all over the place. You know, I did a study here with Peter Weber. He began it in 96 after consulting me on whether or not that was a good study to do. You know, should we track all the butterflies at Rice Creek? And I said, yeah, because he was thinking of getting a grant from Rice Creek Associates. And I said, yeah, that'd be a terrific idea. His son was very interested in butterflies because they used to, well, they still do. They have the Exploring Nature program over here. He was enrolled in that, and I would teach the kids how to collect insects and make a collection. Okay. So after he left those classes, he still had the interest. He was in high school. They wanted to do something together. He asked me if this was a good idea. I said, it's an excellent idea. And after I got off the phone with him, I said, you dummy, why didn't I think of that myself? You know, I could have easily done that here. But anyway, he and Nick did it for about 4 years. Nick became a senior, he graduated. He needed somebody else to help him out. He says, well, do you know of anybody who would be interested? And I said, yes, I would. So we did it together from about 1999 to 2008 when he finally left and moved to Colorado. But anyway, getting back to him, they were all over the place. Now this one, I think the picture was from the herb garden. Okay, I was so glad to see these things because sometimes there are just such years of scarcity, you don't see them at all. So I thought, here's a nice one, it's cooperating nice, take a picture of it. I get out onto the trails, they're all over the place. They're all over the place. So I started counting them by 5s and 10s. That's how many were. To make matters a little bit more challenging, when I came to the field station that day, I forgot my papers that I recorded, my data sheets. So I had to come in to the field station. I asked Wendy if she had any spare paper, and I had to draw some lines so I couldn't be, you know, because no lines were on the paper. You want to make sure you get the data just right. So every third entry, I would put a line. So I had sets of 3. And I figured that's enough to keep me from getting confused. So I'm counting all these things. It's during the monarch migration, so I'm counting monarchs. Plus, there's all these other things that are flying around that I need to keep track of. So I counted something like 348 painted ladies. And in all honesty, I think I skipped as many as I counted. That's how plentiful they were. They made monarchs look like a rare butterfly that day, and they were in the midst of their migration. So these are ones that migrate. They just have these population eruptions every so often, and then they move out of the area.
So, do they, you know, like the monarchs we know go to Mexico and all winter together? Do the painted ladies have a place that they go and?
No, just where it's warm and where they can continue with their lifestyle. Yeah. That's a good question. Okay, here's a nice close-up of them too. Now, if this happens to settle on the ground, okay, and you're just walking by, you won't see this. As colorful as it may look on the other side, you won't see it. It blends in so well with everything. And that's true of a lot of different butterflies. I tell people when they take a nature walk, okay, and of course, people can do what they want, and they always do anyway, but you take the headphones off and you listen to the birds and the sounds of nature. Okay, you walk slowly and look at things around you, because when you're just going through, you're missing so much. Okay? A lot of people miss all kinds of butterflies in their yards because they're not looking for them. You know, I never see any butterflies in my backyard. Well, have you really looked? You know, we just tend to go about our daily business and we don't appreciate nature enough. George here is out in nature all the time, taking photographs of things he sees along the way. They're always a joy to see. And I can tell that he's into it to the point where he's not just going out for a walk. Now, people use the nature trails to go exercising too. I guess that's a different matter. You know, you can't observe nature and go exercising at the same time. I know what I prefer. Okay. This is known as a red admiral, belongs to the same genus as the painted lady. It is also a migrator. And some of them, if the climate happens to be a little bit more cooperative, or if they find a right nook or cranny, they will end up hibernating here. But most of them end up going down south. So these are taken from my garden at home. This is called a snout butterfly. Okay. It has, now there's the proboscis, which is the feeding tube that is usually coiled up. Okay, and on either side of that are these structures called palps. And they're basically used as a sensory organ. Okay, just like a lot of butterfly feet and antennae are sensory organs as well. Okay, this one here. Okay, these are the palps right here, so they stick right out. Most butterflies, you can't see them at all. Okay, this picture was taken in 2014 on the brick wall by the Grand Ole Opry. Okay, now that's the newer Grand Ole Opry, not the older building, okay, because it built a larger one and expanded it. And of course, they can have many venues there that can accommodate the crowd. And as an aside, I actually got to sing on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. We joined the tour, and the tour guide asked if any of us to do that. So everybody wanted to do that. So we get up on the stage and we say, "You are my sunshine." So we got to sing at the Grand Ole Opry. This specimen was taken in 1965 in Lackawanna, New York, in back of McKinley Elementary School, which was the school that I went to. My brother Jim and I were around the playground area trying to catch butterflies. I went in one direction, he went in the other direction, and he found this in the bushes behind the building. I was so jealous. He got a snout. I don't have a snout. You know how kids are. I was like any other kid. So here is the palp. When you see it head down, you can see that it's quite long. This one got broken off somehow. I don't know if it was during the time we caught it or afterwards, after it was mounted. But he had it, and after a couple of years, he lost interest. I said, "Why don't we call it? I don't want to catch butterflies anymore. Can I have your snout?" He said, "Sure, take it." So I took his snout. Okay. But before that happened, a year or two after this, I'm going collecting in a small neighborhood field. And it was at the corner of Abbott Road and Norfolk. Norfolk was just regular suburban street. Abbott Road was a busier road. There was this patch here that was a field. And then next to it was where my elementary science teacher lived. Okay, so I would actually see him occasionally when I was in the field. Anyway, this was just after a rain. I went out there and these snouts were all over the place. Okay, and I was so happy. Now, this is before I got my brother's snout. Okay, I was so happy to get that. to see them. I didn't catch a single one. I went back to my house, got my brother Jim, he said, Jim, you're not gonna believe it. The snouts are all over the place. Come on, let's get some. So he got his net, we went down there, and we're all gone. What I didn't realize at the time was that was a migrating group.
Right.
And they were there just for a short while, and then they took off. So again, so close, but yet so far. I just didn't get it. Until we got this one. Now, we have seen these at the field station. I think we have 4 days where we recorded their presence. Usually in July. But none of those times were we able to get a decent picture. They were just too active. They would not cooperate. But we at least got close enough where we could identify what they were. So it wasn't until 2021, in September, I was up on the Red Trail. There's an upper field in that area. And I found a snout butterfly. So I took the picture of it, and it was a little bit more worn than a July specimen or the one that you saw from Tennessee. But it was very cooperative. It was feeding. It would go from flower to flower, mostly this goldenrod. And for a while, it rested up in a tree. It just flew up into the tree. I waited 15 minutes for it to come down. And then it started feeding again. I would follow it again. I was just so mesmerized by seeing one. And I don't collect anymore. So I just used the camera. So here he is. And I got tons of pictures. I probably got 20 more of them than what I'm showing you here. Because again, you try to sneak up on it and get the best shot of it. And mostly cooperative. Once in a while, I would scare it off, but it would just go down a short distance to the next set of flowers and start feeding again. Okay, now, this was taken in Saratoga, New York, on the where the battlefields were for the Revolutionary War. And I'm walking along the trail, and there's all these crescent butterflies. I think most of them are northern crescents. We have northerns here, but we have pearl crescents, which are more common. And they're on this dung. Okay, they're just sipping the juices from the dung. And they just hoard it all over. There are so many butterflies, and they're males. There's not a single female in here. They're all males that are trying to get whatever nutrients they can. Okay. So I managed to get a decent picture of it. And again, most of them are pretty much preoccupied. The thing is, when you find clusters like this, if you happen to startle a few of them, then they all start taking off. It's almost like a warning, danger, danger. So, here is a pipeline swallowtail. This was taken in the Appalachian Mountains, right near the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. Okay, it's a male. It's sipping moisture from the ground, and beautiful sheen too. This is and typically speaking, a very active butterfly. There have been many times when I was actually collecting, where I'd be on a trail that was basically on a hill, because they do a behavior called hilltopping, where the males will go up and down the hill searching for a female mate. Okay. So I'm standing in the, and they're coming up every so often, and I'm ready with that net. And to try to catch these things in the air, you might as well forget it, because I guess they sense it. They see, they've got compound eyes, so they've got all these small little facets that they see. Everything is moving at once, and I just couldn't catch them that way. But I got a nice photograph many years later. Here's the other side. And this one is also feeding with some summer azers, which is a small purplish blue butterfly. We have them around here too. Fairly common, but again, you have to look for them. You have to know what you're looking at. Okay, now this I guess was horse dung. Okay, and so you had a bunch of pipeline swallowtails and also some summer razors up here, and something went by with a wheel. And those guys were so preoccupied, they got crushed into the dung. Okay, and I'm still trying to figure this one out. I don't know if he got hit by it or whether he came after the fact. He doesn't look alive to me. Okay, and I forget the circumstance now. It's been too many years. I'm not sure if it was living. I think it was lying there dead. It might have been crushed too, even though it wasn't as close.
So the horse is pooping and they got crushed by the poop, is that what you're saying?
No, they were feeding on the poop.
Okay, I got
And
you.
then, yeah. Oh, what a death that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is bad enough. Yeah, so, I don't know if the wagon went by, an ATV or whatever it was. Maybe another horse and accepted it, I don't know. Okay, here is another butterfly common to our area. This is known as a question mark. I want to point something out right away because I'm going to get back to it later on. If you look at the wing over here, there's 1, 2, 3, and a 4th dot. Okay, that is going to be significant. Okay, so keep that in mind a little further down the way. So here he is feeding on some kind of dung too. And I believe this was here at the fueling station. Okay, now that was more or less a summer form. A later season form. Here's the same one. It's a did I call that other one a question mark? Yeah, okay. Same thing, question mark, different different form due to a number of factors. Sometimes the dryness or just the lateness of the season or the wetness. But again, whoops. These problems are too close to each other. I'm out of control. But here's the 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's pointing in a different direction, so it might be a little hard to visualize. But it's those four dots again. Okay. This is a way to tell a question mark. Another good way is it's got these long tails. It's not as long as a swallowtail, and it's got this purplish sheen along the outer edge.
That's really the name of it?
A question mark. And you
I
might
thought you were like gonna tell us later what it
No.
was, but
No.
it's just like, I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's just a question mark.
No.
And then.
and it's going to come clear in the next slide. Why it's called
That's not the scientific name?
no.
No.
No,
No.
okay, but it's the common name.
Yeah, question mark, okay.
Pelagonia interrogationis.
Okay.
So it becomes clear in the scientific name as well. And the reason is, if you look on the other side, here's the inverted question mark. Kind of like a comma and a dot. Okay. The other thing I like about this photo is you get a good look at the length of that tail. Okay. And again, that purplish hue. Okay, these are just fringes of scales that are kind of hanging off the wing of the butterfly. Okay, now this one here is known as a comma. Okay, because all it has is a comma. Now there are other species in this genus that also have commas. But they might be called the green comma. Okay. And other, there's one more, there's a hoary comma, and then there's another one. In fact, it's the only other one found here, and I don't know why I can't think of the name offhand now. But there are a couple of them, and you can basically tell from the top side what species they are, if you're able to get a look at it. Here is a comma on the upper side, and notice it's only got 3 of those dots. There's no 4th one up here. And the 4th one actually looks like a thickened dash of the other one. So comma has 3, question mark has 4. They also have.
Is there a semicolon?
Yeah, I know.
There is no semicolon.
Yeah.
They also have those tails, but the tails are not as long as the question marks. Okay, so now, if you're in the field and you're looking at these things, sometimes you don't, I mean, this is a nice picture, he was cooperative, but when they're flying from flower to flower or just going about their business, you might not always get a look at this, so there are three things I try to look for. First of all, what is the size? These are a little bit smaller than a question mark. But unless you see both after a while, you have no way of knowing which is the larger size and which is the smaller. But that's one thing, I look at it by size. The other thing is I try to look at the tails. If it's a shorter tail, then it's a comma. If it's a longer tail, it's a question mark. And if I can really get a good view of it, I look at those dots. And those dots, probably for people who are looking the first time, that's probably the best way to tell them apart. If you see three of them, it's a comma. If you see four, it's a question mark. Just like a comma is one line, question mark is comma and a dot. They got something extra. Good one to associate. Okay, here's one. I'm in the field and it's investigating me. So it's on. Now I know it's not the best of pictures, but can anybody hazard a guess as to whether it's a comma or a question mark? Oh. 3 dots. 3 dots. 3 dots. So it will be a comma. Yes. I've had right admirals do that to me too. And there's one picture that I can't believe I forgot to put in here. I don't know if you know what a morpho is. It's a South American butterfly. It's large like this. It's a bright blue, iridescent blue. It doesn't have the pigment blue. It's the structure of the wing that makes it look blue. Okay. I had a picture taken of one that landed on my cheek. It was a very warm, hot, humid day. It landed on my cheek and was feeding off the salts on the side of my face.
They have the family punctuation.
No, they are the family nymphalidae. What took you so long? I expected you to come up with some of these a little bit.
The punctuation.
Just to give you a little bit of insight here, George and I are former teaching colleagues. We taught social studies, and I taught biology. Okay, another good story here. Okay, you know, I could have gone through the butterflies and listed my classification, tell you this is that and that family. I like telling these stories because over 50 years I've accumulated a few. Okay, so here's a cabbage light trying to have a trying to mate with an albino sulfur. Now, I'm not sure I would dare say that this is probably an albino orange sulfur. Albinism is very rare in butterflies. Usually it's found in females because in insects and butterflies, the sex chromosomes are reversed. Females are XY and males are XX. So you only need one of these albinism genes, okay, for it to be an albino. Whereas in the male, you need 2. So this cabbage white, and I saw them in the air. They're going through their little sequence of trying to figure each other out. And that female albino looked pretty cooperative for the most part. But then it got to the point where she landed and he made a couple of attempts to mate and she rejected him. So he came back and forth a couple of times trying, and it just wasn't meant to be. So, you know, usually there are certain pheromones that are given off, or sometimes some of these butterflies have, they can see the ultraviolet range, which we cannot. Okay, and they can look for different patterns and such. This female, I think, was a fairly fresh one. Most females are when they're mating. The males come out before the females, and then they stake their territories. The females come into it. usually make right away. But the big proof that this female is definitely rejecting him is, and I don't know how well you can see, but its abdomen is turned upward. And when a butterfly turns its abdomen upward, it might as well say, I'm not interested. The male butterfly cannot mate with it in that position. So finally, the cabbage wife learned it was not meant to be. I don't know if he ever realized that it was wrong species to begin with, or just the fact that she had ultimately rejected him. But that's what happened.
It wasn't a female.
No,
You picked the right day.
yeah.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Not a very common butterfly over here. This is a wild indigo dusky wing. I do see it occasionally, not every year. But this one, I was coming off of the Blue Trail, ready to have my lunch break. And it was on the false blue indigo plant, which is right on the back corner of the herb garden. Okay. So I'm taking a number of pictures of it. And the one on the left is the first week I saw it. The second week, I actually saw it again, and in the same area, but on a different plant. A lot more sedate than it was the first time. But it wasn't until I looked at this at home, because a lot of times you just try to get a good picture. You're not really studying what you're doing. And when you look at these things, you find out sometimes after the fact. I've got photos that I've looked at that I took years ago and found something in it that I never realized at the time, even if I loaded them onto the computer and looked at them at the time, and I'm still discovering things. So I could probably quit going out in the field right now and learn so much more from the photographs I have than to go out and do anything new to try to keep me away. It's not going to happen.
You start photographing with a film camera?
I did, yes.
Expensive.
It was very expensive. And I think that's where I basically developed that technique of trying to get closer and closer, but not taking the picture. You know, get as close as I dare and then take the picture, because color slide film, yes, extremely expensive. Of course, once I went to digital, I could click away as much as I want and you know, have a lot more success at it. So, but what I realized in this picture here, she was laying eggs on the false blue indigo. Okay. The position of the abdomen shows that they will curve it out and land on the leaf. So that was a neat little benefit after the fact. Okay, these are also this is a skipper also. Skippers basically are small butterflies. This one's a little bit larger, the largest one in our area. And they just have this way of darting. Okay, as they go through, and some of them are lower to the ground than others, and they kind of negotiate through the grass, sort of like the satyrs did, but not necessarily hopping like the satyrs did. But anyway, female up on top, male on the bottom here, getting ready for a mating sequence. These males are really good protectors of their territory. And they don't care what comes in the area. They will attack and chase. They chase me. They chase dragonflies, which feeds on them. They go right after them. And the best place to see this, there are two good places, but the best place to see this is in the lower field on the Blue Trail, right opposite of the fish finders.
Mike, how come butterflies using this basic one?
Oh, well, I guess it's a handy way to find out if the mate is receptive for one, but also this it's an excellent nectar source. So even though none of the larvae of any butterflies in the area feed on it, the name is escaping me right now. It's all over the place. Purple loosestrife, yes. So I understand it's an invasive and people want to get rid of them. Okay. From a butterfly point of view, this plant is heaven. Okay, because everything gets attracted to it. So it's really nice.
Isn't there something about different about their antenna and also
Yes.
their wings are closed when they sit?
Okay, excellent question. The antennae at the end, and I wish I could show you this a little bit better, but they're clumped, they've got like a little tip on the end of them. So whereas most butterfly antennae go straight up, okay, it goes straight up, it's got the regular club at the end, but then it's got like a little curved tip on it. So that's one way to tell a skipper from a butterfly. Another way of doing it, of telling them, is how they rest. You know, most moths will rest with their wings flat out. Okay, butterflies mostly are up like this. Okay. Skippers, the hind wings flatten out somewhat, and the forewings spread out a little somewhat. So that if you've got a good, if this were a skipper, okay, and I'm looking straight at it, okay, you get a good head-on view of all four wings at once, even though they're not totally open out. Awfully hard to photograph, awfully hard.
So a skipper is not a moth and it's not a butterfly.
Right, it's more butterfly-like than moth-like. But they're in their, what they call their own super family. So, these males, and this is one of these points where when you're going through a field, you want to just take your time and look, even stop. Because what you watch these things, you get out in that field and he's up on a stalk of something, and that's his roost. And most of the time he'll come back to that and he'll just chase things around and investigate. And if another male happens to come into his territory, he'll chase that one away too. And they'll go back and forth. And sometimes when they do that, they rise high up into the air, and where they come down, they land in the territorial section of a third male. And they all get involved. So I can stand there and I can watch all the zigzagging taking place and finding just exactly where the boundaries are. And, you know, it's just a regular field, but it's really not.
No, they have their minds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, USSR and, well, Russia and Ukraine, you know, staking out territories. This one wants that wants the other. So that's what these guys do. The other place where I see this happen often around here is in the circle, out in the parking lot. They'll roost on the trees over there and they'll look for females, and if something else comes by, they'll do the same thing. But it's more dramatic in that lower field. And they're actually found throughout the field station, but that's where I see most of the activity. They're really neat. Silver spotted skipper is a large silver or whitish patch. Some look more silver than others look whiter. But in all these butterflies, even when I'm showing you these marks, there's always a bit of individual variation. You know, we're all of the human race, but we all look a little bit different. None of us look the same here. Same thing with them. Okay, this is a Hobomok skipper. And for many years, this had the most regular flight season here, mid-May to mid-June. Okay, with sometimes a little variation on the end. But from mid-May to mid-June, you could always see these things. Things started to happen around here. We had in 2003, we had the ice storm, took down a lot of trees and such. Since that time too, we've had not actually floods, but very wet season. Okay, we've had a drought here not too many years ago, and it's wreaking havoc with the butterflies and other insects. We've got more invasives coming in, and that's affecting these things. I find, you know, they're usually found around the edges of woods, in the fields or You can go on the trails and you will see them zipping back and forth all the time. Now with the there's rose that what's the rose that's invasive? Multiflora rose. With them coming into the area around those trails, I don't see these guys there anymore. And I don't always see them during that mid-May to mid-June time that I was so used to seeing. So something's happening with these guys. Just take a look at this pattern here for a moment. Okay, because this next one, this is a peck skipper. Okay, it looks like a Hobomock skipper, but this one is a lot smaller in size. It prefers more open fields and even lawns. Okay, I get them in my lawns all the time at home. And this one is a little bit different from a normal peck skipper, talking about individual variation. Notice in between here, there's a little bit of brown. Okay, normally this section here is not as wide. So I just happened to catch one that varies a little bit different from the normal one. The reason why I put this one on here is not necessarily compared with the previous slide, but I was out on my garden one day. I've got this long garden at the side of the house that I put various butterfly attractive butterflies in, and I've since let go wild. So I've got milkweed in there and all kinds of stuff. And it might not look too attractive to the neighbors, but I don't care. In fact, I'd like to end up taking part of my lawn and just letting it grow wild. It won't work in the summer. And it doesn't sit well with my wife to begin with. So I've lost before I've even started. So anyway, I'm going by my patch of flowers and I see a peck skipper, but it looks a little bit weird. Okay, and I get closer up to it and I see what the difference was. Okay, it was a male and a female that were mating. And the male had a hard time eventually pulling away from the female and was stuck. And the male had since died. And the female is flying around carrying the dead male with her. Okay, now this was on a slide. The quality isn't that good, but of the pictures I took, this was the best one. It landed on my garden hose. Okay, here's the female here. Here's the male, and it's all kind of raggedy, okay, from being moved around, I guess. And they're just stuck and they couldn't get a flight. Not really necessarily a pleasant thing, but still a favorite slide of mine, because how often do you see moments like this? You don't, you know? So I just went in the house real quick, grabbed the camera and took a picture. Okay. This is known as a hair streak. I sometimes call them swallowtail wannabes because they have these hair-like structures at the end. Okay, this is known as a juniper hair streak. I found this at El Dorado Preserve up in Jefferson County. And it's actually, again, with lighting and such an angle, it's actually got a greenish underside, but you can't see it in this photo. It just doesn't show well. But that's one I hope to get up there this summer around the same time, around June 20th. And hopefully I can find them again. Been up there a few times through the years, and I just don't see them anymore. So we're going to try again. This was 2 weeks ago. This was April 27th. I was traveling down the Green Trail here, and as you get away from the second boardwalk, you have to make a sharp left-hand turn and continue down the trail. And you go a short distance, and then you have to make a right-hand turn to continue along with it. I made that right-hand turn, but it was too soggy. I managed to get across without getting into all the water and mud. But then as I went further up, and I was lucky I made it where as I got further up, it was even worse. So I turned around, I backtracked, and connecting to that green trail, right where I made the right-hand turn, is a maintenance trail. So I figured, well, I'll take a maintenance trail and walk out. And while I did, I saw these two morning cloak butterflies. These are examples of butterflies that hibernate in the area. Okay, they are very closely related to the common question mark that I showed you. Okay. In fact, on the bottom side of a morning cloak, you can see somewhat of a comma on it. More punctuation. So these two were going through a sequence where they flip up in the air a little bit and, you know, rendezvous and then go back down again. And one would hop over to one side of the log, the other one would come over next to it, and then he'd move again, and the other one would come. And it was actually the female that was doing the moving. Female was on the right, male was on the left. And that male just stayed there forever and ever. And the female, after a while, just showed no interest at all. And the male got frustrated and took off. So it was not to be. The interesting thing about that day was, as I traveled from trail to trail, I saw more morning cloaks that day than I ever had in any spring. I came up with a total of 7, which if I see, you know, 2 or 3, that's a good day for spring hibernating. So, so it was a nice day just for that fact alone. Okay, this is a black swallowtail. This is the smallest swallowtail in our area. I know I'm kind of gearing towards swallowtails, it seems. I like swallowtails, I guess. This one is a male. I can tell that by the larger yellow row of spots. Female will be larger in size, and she will have dots in place of those larger spots, and they kind of run like a parallel to the ones on the very outer edge of the wings. So here it is feeding on marigolds. Okay. Now, the larvae of the black swallowtail would feed on the dill that was in the herb garden. And we had dill there for a number of years. I don't know what happened. I don't know if somebody pulled it out or what happened. We don't have dill there anymore.
We planted a
Okay. So that's what its larva looks like. And it was a year or two ago, I think it was in 21, that I'm checking the roof for the larvae of the giant swallowtail. And I found a black swallowtail larva on it. Now at that time there was no dill in the herb garden. So I had since found out that one of the food plants of the black swallowtail was this fruit.
If you know all of that family, I found them in the carrots.
Carrots,
and
yeah,
parsley.
yeah. Queen Anne's lace, which is wild carrot, they feed on that as well. But yes, that whole thing of plants. Okay, meals on wings. There have been instances where I've been after a particular butterfly and it gets snatched away from me, either by a bird or by a dragonfly or something, right? So this one day I'm following this moth. It was a day-flying moth, and dragonfly happened to catch it in midair and then land on a plant stalk. And I guess he was more interested in the moth than he was in my taking the picture, so I was able to get this. So, you know, there are so many things stacked up against butterflies. From the time they're an egg, you know, there are certain insects that will feed on them. Sometimes there are bugs that will eat the leaves on which they are on and eat the eggs accidentally. Some of the eggs of certain butterflies will hatch, and before they start feeding on the leaf, they will eat their siblings. So there's all these dynamics going on, and then they're, of course, being a larva and being parasitized upon, and all kinds of things that happen to them. And even as adults, everything's chasing after them and trying to get them as a meal. It's a wonder that many of these even survive to carry on the next generation. there's a book I have here that describes it well. I'll show it to those of you who are interested in the end. And what a magnificent scientist she is. She's not specifically into butterflies in general, but she researched so much. She knows so many little tidbits of important information. I just find them mesmerizing. Okay, another Larson picture. Okay, so this one survives through all those traumas and survives as a pupa. It gets out, it's ready to take off, and it gets caught in the spider web. I have seen a number of butterflies in spider webs. The only one I recall really helping out was a red admiral. It was in a spider web that was formed on the second boardwalk. And as I'm going by, I see all this activity, and of course, he's trying to get out. I don't know where the spider was at the time, but I felt sorry for it. So I took my pencil and I just kind of broke the web and let it get alone. Here's another one, you know, it's going through all the stages. The frog notices a little bit of shaking, it's emerging, it's forming, it's spreading out its wings, pumping its fluids through it to straighten them out, and then it grabs it as a meal. It's so close but yet so far. And it happens all the time. Here's a cabbage white that got its leg stuck inside one of the florets of the milkweed plant. And I've seen that happen a number of times too. When this happens, I do try to help them out. I don't always help the web ones. But this one got stuck and ended up dying, and that's just the way it was. Okay. And then there's what they call the windshield effect. Okay, how many times do you try, especially if you're out in the country, okay, and your whole front of the car and windshield are just splattered with bugs. In more recent years, as I traveled from Liverpool to come up here to Rice Creek, I had fewer and fewer bugs on my windshield. And I think one of the main reasons for that is all the pesticides we're using. I need some water. Excuse me, just a minute here. I haven't talked this much in so long. When I taught the first few days of school, I would come home with a list that was so broad because I wasn't used to it. Thank you. So I think the pesticides have done so much damage to all kinds of bugs. And I understand the reason for spraying. I know they've got a crop. I know it's their livelihood and all that. And I understand with Triple E and stuff, how they spray these chemicals into the Cicero swamp. But when they kill these insects, they kill all insects. You know, they're after mosquitoes, they kill everything. And then we have fewer of these things around. The other thing is, you know, butterflies in particular, and I'm sure other insects do this as well. They hop from area to area. And a lot of these areas they use as corridors. Okay. And if you destroy some of these corridors over here, and you've got a butterfly whose intention is to get over here, it may never make it. Okay. Can't establish a colony over here. Whereas in pastures, it was able to skip along and establish a colony. Now they can't fit anymore. So I don't know what the answer is. You know, I'm holy, not God. So my last name is Holy. Okay, put it in the context here. That's the student used to ask me a question in class, what is whatever, and I said, well, gee, I really don't know the answer to that one. And they'd say, well, you're a teacher, and I'd say, well, Yeah, I'm a teacher, but I'm holding up God. I don't know it all. Nobody knows it all. If we tells you to know it all, don't believe them, because they're not being truthful. And kids see through that eventually anyway, so you don't want to do that. Okay, here's another hair streak. This is an Acadian hair streak. We used to find a few of them here at the field station. Just about all hair streaks are gone from here. And I don't know why. Except that within the last 20 or 30 years, this field station has grown up, the trees have gotten taller. A lot of these things like to roost toward the top of the trees. Okay, and unless you got a good stack of plants, like a good section of, well, during the summertime, maybe milkweed would be the best one to mention. They won't come down, and if they do, they're, you know, you get a good stack of them. And we used to see hair streaks all over the milkweed. We don't see any of them anymore. But we don't have the patches of milkweed like we used to do. They have anymore. So, but anyway, the neat thing about these guys, their tails actually can look at like antennae, and then some of them have eye spots. This one not so much, but I guess we could consider maybe this area here that substitutes for the head. And sometimes a bird or an ambush one, okay, we'll see that, think it's the head, move around to the other side. Now there's the real head, butterfly sees it, can take off. Okay, there are a lot of hair streaks that you can see out in the field where the back ends have been chopped off. And that's the reason why. Okay, so it's basically a 50-50 chance of what end you're attacking if you happen to be hungry for a hair streak. Okay, this is another hair streak. It's the hickory hair streak. Okay, a little different from the one previously in that it's got no, the blue comes out a lot farther here than it does in the Acadian hair streak. These are not very common at any time. I happened to find this one in my garden in suburbia. Okay, and took a picture of it. Okay, now there was 1 year where I found another one in the garden accidentally, because what I was doing was getting rid of Japanese beetles. And I don't use pesticides. My method of killing Japanese beetles would be to take a Cool Whip container, fill it halfway with water, put in a couple drops of dishwashing liquid, going under the plant where the beetles are, under the leaf, and just tapping them and knocking them off. Japanese beetles, to protect themselves, fall to the ground. Well, knowing this, you put the container under the tap, they go to fall to the ground. Instead, they fall into the soapy water. Okay, forms a film on their spiracles along their abdomen. Spiracles are basically their openings to their breathing system, and you suffocate them on the spot. Okay, so I'm going from flower to flower, plant to plant, and I'm doing this, and I happen to see one of these things on a milkweed. Okay, now there were also Japanese beetles. So I figured, well, if I'm very careful, I can get under there, tap the Japanese beetles, and leaves the hair streak alone. Well, instead of the hair streak taking off like this, it does one of these things. And as it's making that U loop, it falls into the soapy water. Of course, it panics immediately. It's flapping wildly. I feel very bad because of what I did. So I have no guilt in killing Japanese beetles. But a hair streak like this, trauma. I was actually traumatized by it. And more so because it happened to be a female full of eggs. So as rare as these things are, I just caused the demise of a butterfly that had all these potential offspring. So what are you going to do? Am I boring people yet? No, you're too kind. Okay, season butterflies. I talked about some of the trials and tribulations that they go through just in surviving. Okay, most butterflies survive not more than a couple of weeks. Some defy the odds. They live longer than their projected lifespan. Okay, we see that in ourselves. Okay. So I just want to show you a few of the heroes of the butterfly world for sticking it out as long as they have. Okay, look at this tiger swallowtail. Look at how it's been torn at, and this is an early September photograph. They're normally a June, July, August butterfly. But this one has been through many trials and tribulations. Here is what is called a great spangled fritillary. Okay, spangled because it's got a lot of silver dots on the other side. This was a early September one. These things come out in late June through July, and that's all they're supposed to last. Okay, this one toward the end of August just had all the quick, not flying as swiftly as it normally would, but it can still fly. Okay, I don't run as well as I used to, but I can still run. Okay, here's a viceroy. This is going more into the latter part of September. Okay, this is one my first year after I retired. I was able to get out here in the fall because I didn't have classes. And I saw this same viceroy week after week after week. And you know, after a while, you see them 2 or 3 times. You look forward to seeing it again. Okay, so here he is, just doing his best and just surviving. Okay, here's that great spangled fritillary again. Okay, so I'm comparing one on the left to how it normally looks during the regular season. And you can see all those silver spots on it, which is why it gets part of its name. Okay. This is another satyr. Okay. This is called an Appalachian brown. And this was into July. These are usually early to late June butterflies. And it too has been through the ringer. Things have attacked it. And it still managed to get along. So, and look at this giant swallowtail. The hind wings are practically gone, but it still manages to get around. And truth being, for all butterflies, all you really need is about this much wing for it to be able to fly. Okay. The rest is either for show or for protective coloration or for whatever else it was intended to do. And this was also a September butterfly. So a little bit more of Gary Larson to help close us out here. Okay, so the whole flower bed is still in shock. He was such a quiet butterfly, kept mainly to himself mostly. I think that's neat. Did I go there? Here's a microphone where they're doing the interview where they're talking about that particular butterfly. And the cameraman, look at the initials, BNN. Either I'm thinking it's either Butterfly Network News or Butterfly News Network. Okay. The guy got such a great mind. I admire him very much. Okay, and then here's an excellent specimen. Speaking of beauty, innocence, and fragile life. Hand me the jar of Visa. Okay, and I had one of these moments. Okay, as I did my collection, I would show it to various people. I would get a comment from them saying, "How can you collect these things? They're so beautiful." You know, and I was ready for them. Okay, you know, collections have scientific value. You know, they only live for a short time anyway. Okay, you know, they can be studied and admired forever, as long as you take care of them. You know, they're almost immortal. And now I can't do, I had that moment where I couldn't do it because they only live a short period of time. So it's just the other way of looking at that philosophy that completely changed. I can't do it. I went out with a friend once and we're going along a trail, and one of those small blue summer azers was flittering around on the ground, probably ready to search for some moisture and minerals. And the friend goes and just steps on it for no reason at all. I still haven't gotten over it. And that's been easily 20 years ago. How, you know I killed it, I put things in collections, but just to go out there and to do that on purpose, just for the sake of doing it, I can't see it. I just can't see it. So, karma. Professor Levon had many enemies in the entomological world, but if you examine that data label, you'll find exactly when and where he was, shall we say, collected. So, you know, you might win the battle, but ultimately you will lose the war. So, and with that, unless there's other questions, that's the end of my talk. Yes.
I was just wondering if you could briefly tell us the difference between a moth and a butterfly.
Okay. A moth will have antennae that are generally feathery, whereas a butterfly will have a more or less straight, unadulterated antenna. That's one. Okay. Generally speaking, not always true. Moths fly at night, butterflies fly during the day. The third one is that there is a clip that kind of hooks the forewings to the hind wings together, called a frenulum. Okay, so the wings don't spread out quite the same way that butterflies do. Those are the main ones. Oh,
No, we don't.
yeah.
Do they feel pain?
They have a nervous system. So who knows? You know, they have a brain, certainly, and the brain, they're able to distinguish between what flower has more nectar than another. Okay, after, you know, sensing it, they look at the color of the flower, because some flowers, as flowers age, they go through different colors. So a yellow might turn to an orange, and might turn then to a red, or the petals just fall off completely. And that's an indication to the butterfly of how much nectar is in the flower, because the butterfly certainly doesn't want to spend any more time than it has to finding a source of food. So it kind of goes toward those particular flowers where they know the nectar is going to be stronger.
Is there an mimic, butterfly mimic monarch to avoid losing? Why can't monarch butterfly?
Okay, the monarch butterfly, when they're larvae and they hatch, okay, they feed on the milkweed leaf. Okay, and the milkweeds have I think it's called the glycophosphate, that is poisonous. Okay, and for the most part, they are able to incorporate that into their bodies to make it okay for them, but not okay for whatever else is feeding on them. Many monarch larvae, when they come out of the egg, end up dying because they get poisoned from it. They have to kind of build up a tolerance for it. This is why many female monarchs, when they're laying their eggs, they try to lay the eggs on a milkweed plant that is fairly young and fresh, because those chemicals haven't built up to the degree where they will prove harmful to most of the larvae.
And glyphosate is in Roundup, which is made to kill weeds, but still can affect butterflies.
Yes, yes.
know, I want to get a copy of the.
Oh, during the pandemic, I started a book based on my 25 years of research here, with flashbacks to my younger days when I'd be talking about a particular butterfly that was found here. They give me a memory. So, for instance, the stout butterfly with my brother Jim, that is definitely in the book. Okay, so I've been working with it. I've been working with people to help me get this published. I am this close. Okay, I've got a page of final stages that was just given to me yesterday. Okay, I'm getting ready for a week's vacation. I can't get to those right away. So I emailed back and said, well, is it okay? They said, okay, fine, but you know, if I had gotten to it right away, they expected a printing date of June 1st. So it's going to be delayed probably a few weeks before I get to it. And I still have to check out a hard copy before I get the final go. I want to make sure everything is just fine. We've gone back and forth. I made correction. I submitted it to them. They formatted it for me. They gave it back to me. I found 7 corrections that I wanted to make. I made those corrections. They're fine with it. I've been notified by the publishing company or the printer, I should say, that they're ready to go, and they're glad, they're pleased to do this book, which is called Fluttering Butterflies. Well, it wasn't called Fluttering Butterflies. It was called Fluttering Wings. Okay. So I got back to the person I was working with. I said, you know, did somebody have that name and they had to change it? Why wasn't I consulted? What's going on here? She says, when I gave them the information, I inadvertently made a mistake. She says, but during the process of setting everything up, she says, I will get a chance after they've done that to give them any changes. I can't give them to change while they're in the middle of all that. So she says, it will be taken care of. So however long this stuff takes, I've been going through the whole thing and just taking my time very carefully. It took me over a year just to find this person. There's a lot of people out there that are ready to grab your money and then do essentially nothing for you. And I'd be willing to talk to anybody about that if you're interested. But it's been since 2020 up until now. The easiest part, it wasn't always easy, but the easiest part was writing. The hardest part is doing the work afterwards. So,
You ever get to the Pine Bush in Albany?
yes, I did. I went up there one summer. It was during the summer. I had off. I was going up to Albany for training in forensics because I was teaching DNA fingerprinting and other techniques in my class. And I wanted to go out to get a little bit more education. So while I had some time off, I went in there. I was really concerned about getting ticks in that pine bush area because they're full of them. And but unfortunately, I went out at the wrong time to see what's called a Melissa blue. Feeds on lupine, and I wasn't able to see that, but I saw other things and took some pretty neat pictures of the area. A lot of scrub oak in that area. And
Next weekend is their Lupin Festival. Next
Oh,
Saturday is the
see,
Lupin Festival.
see,
That's the only thing that Connor blue butterfly eats.
okay, that's a form of the Melissa blue, the Carter blue,
And
yes.
it's only there. The Connor blue is only there at the office.
Well, you know, Kamal and I were up at Lakeview Wildlife Management Area. And we're going through the fields and this truck pulls up with a guy in it. And he's asking us questions about what we're doing. Because we're there with our cameras and just, you know, enjoying the area and seeing what we could see. And he says to me, have you seen any Carter, because I told him we're looking at butterflies. He says, have you seen any Carter blues here? And I says, oh no. I says, you won't find any Carter blues over here. I says, you only find those in the Albany pine bush. And he says, well, he says, you're right, but they're also found in Saratoga. There's an area in Saratoga where they're found. So I think he was testing me as is he really doing, living in this house or what? And luckily I knew the answer. So he knew exactly, so it was, I don't know, I think it was after that, we actually went, my wife and I went up to Saratoga and, but we didn't find any. Of course, when you go onto to view the Saratoga battlegrounds, there are areas that are just sectioned off. You cannot go into those areas at all. The one trail I was able to get into was where you saw all those crescent butterflies on the dung.
I don't hear these word caterpillar. Is that recently?
I'm just used to saying larva.
And our monarchs territorial.
No. Monarchs are really mostly free living. Territorial in the such that they hang around areas that have milkweed. But they won't claim a territory, they won't necessarily fight anything off.
The monarchs here, when they lay their eggs, for those hatchlings to the north or south of the state and lay another.
Okay, the ones that come up from the north, okay, will lay their eggs. Those will develop into the generation that actually does the migration back down south. So once in a while, you might get a few that they're able to, depending on the season and the weather and stuff, lay eggs and cause some development to cause a few more adults to come out, like a second generation up here. But most of the time, it's just that one generation. You can kind of fool around with that a bit if you raise them on your own and keep them in enclosed areas. The thing is too, and I'm glad you brought that up because it stirred up one memory. You've gone to butterfly houses and you've gone into them and you've seen all these monarchs flying around. Okay, notice the size of the monarchs. They are very small. Okay, sort of like what, not as small to the degree that red spotted purple was that I showed you, but they're raised in certain containers, and there's something where they sense the pressure of feeding on the leaves, and they want to get through those stages earlier, and they come out a lot smaller than they normally should. The State Fair usually has a butterfly house every year there. Look at the monarchs if you get a chance to go in and compare them to one that you see in the field. There's a great difference in size of them, just by the way they're raised.
Stress.
Mhm.
Stress.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody wants the same food. It's like two kids trying to get one piece of cake. That's
Right.
So we have a series of field guides, different topics, and this one was created by Michael a few years back. And we were gonna raffle off, but we pulled 10 to raffle off, so just enough to go around, so enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.